Nice. All right, well, we have started recording, and I would like to welcome you to our teaching chat today. I got a couple announcements before we get going, but the purpose of today is to give us the opportunity to ask questions and crowdsource and share ideas and all of those kind of things as we start yet another wonderful semester this coming Monday. A couple of announcements. First of all, you know about the teaching chat. Next week, we start our professional development series during the real semester. It happens every Wednesday at noon. Same Zoom link that got you here is going to get you to all of our events. And Barbara Wigfall is going to talk to us about mind, body, and spirit next week. If you saw our teaching and learning newsletter, I think it was in this morning's K-State today, you'll see kind of the slate for the next several events that we have coming up throughout January and February. So we hope to see you at many of those as we continue. I'd also like to say that the teaching tips coming from the Global Campus are going out, I think, on Thursday mornings in the K-States today. I see Laura is nodding. Last week's was about creating a welcome for your class. I'm really excited to see what tomorrow is going to go out. If you miss it in the K-State today, we're going to promote it on the TLC social media. Please follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And the cat is being a nuisance today. So that is fun. Another announcement, Engage the Sage is a YouTube channel that we maintain. We have a lot of teaching tips and things like that. If you saw our talk last week on bringing empathy to the classroom, our next several Engage the Sage videos are going to be specific ways to do that. So it's going to be kind of, snack-sized bites from that talk. We just put one out this morning on the empathetic course design perspective. So check that out if you're looking for it. And Tucker will probably drop it into the chat because he's good about doing things like that. Other announcements that we need to talk about, Tucker, that I'm missing?
GTA.
GTA orientation, that's right. If you are a new graduate teaching assistant or not a new graduate teaching assistant, tomorrow we have a GTA orientation that we're doing, kind of an overview on teaching principles and things like that. If you would like to come, that's completely wonderful. Tucker's going to drop that Zoom link into the chat if anyone is interested, and we'll just get people kind of up to speed for starting a new semester in all capacities. So yeah, anything else that I'm missing, Tucker? Any other questions that anyone had about any of those things? All right, so one of the things, I was watching the inauguration a little bit before now and watching social media, the response to that, and one of the funniest comments that I saw on Twitter was someone saying, Jill Biden sure looks calm having to finalize 4 syllabi for next week. And I thought this was a really nice way to kind of get all of the stuff that we've got going on and all of the emotions and all of the urgency of going on there. And it put it into my perspective, the stuff I got going on is not the stuff she's got going on. But as we are aware, Dr. Biden has a lot of classes to teach next week, and we are excited too. So with that, I'd like to kind of just open the floor for any questions, issues we're facing, concerns we're having, maybe any breakthroughs we've made in our course planning to kind of get ready. This is your time.
Can I start by whining?
Absolutely.
The changes to Canvas, I think they fixed something that wasn't broken, and I'm unhappy, but I'll leave it at that.
Okay, is this something that's going to affect me? Because I'm now concerned.
Do you mean the controls on the pages? Yeah, the rich
all the rich text stuff that they did, it's just so much harder to navigate, I feel like. And I mean, I figured it out, but I don't see how it was made easier. And I didn't feel like what was there was broken, so I don't really know. Canvas seems to fix things that don't need fixing, and it rarely seems to be an improvement, but that's just I'm just whining. That's all. I'll be quiet now. I got it off my chest.
Good. Completely agree. We can talk about that if other folks are wondering what's going on with that, if you want.
So Laura, I'll ask, I have no idea what either of you is talking about, but it appears that both of you do. Is there a tip or a proactive statement that you could give us to avoid whatever the thing that is causing the angst?
Well, okay, so the rich content editor, when you go in to edit a Canvas page, it used to be that on the right-hand side, you had a direct list of all of the other parts of the course. So you could directly link to another module, to an assignment on that page or in that assignment. You could directly link to everything within Canvas. Now it's kind of buried within a little symbol along the editor bar. And so I could screen share and kind of show people how to navigate that new bar. Would that be helpful? Okay.
I think that would be very helpful. And it's
Oh,
looking like
Trina
other
is
people in the
doing it
chat
already.
are talking
Awesome.
about this being a more complicated process than it had been. So yes, I'm very grateful that you're going to give us some insights here, Laura.
Trina, do you want to go ahead and share and walk through that? And I will find the Canvas guide and share that in the chat.
Okay. So yeah, you can help me too, Laura, because I'm trying to get used to it myself.
It's terrible.
But basically this bar, it used to be a couple of bars up above the editor box, the text box, and they've kind of pushed all that into one. So you still have a lot of your same things, but I find myself using the navigation from the top here a lot more than I did before. Like usually before I could find these things, and now I'm kind of going backwards up here. You'll find the same tools. They're really still there. They're just in a different place, and it is relearning. And yeah, it's been a little frustrating for all of us, I think.
Yeah. So where
somebody
Trina's
mentioned
clicking
external.
right now. Yeah, the links.
So that's the external link. And then where you used to have those nice little, this area that said like files and pages and all that, then if you go to links, you can get that through course links. So it looks very similar to what it did before. It just is not automatically there for you. You kind of have to search for it. Is that what you were referring to, or is there, okay.
Yeah, that used to be just on the right-hand side. Now you have to kind of dive in a little bit deeper.
I would recommend using the insert function a lot because that's where everything is. Like it took me forever to figure out how to break a link, and that's in the insert, media, image, document, files, all that is now using that insert tab. And then it like learns what you're doing. So then it will like change things on the menu with the icons. So like sometimes my link says break link, make link, and then sometimes that's the last thing I did. And then other times it will, it'll change to basically change to be whatever the last thing I did was. So it's trying to be intuitive, but it's really just causing a lot of cursing during course preparation. And then it was automatically, how like YouTube videos always want to do that inline preview? Well, I had to go use HTML code to like get it to stop. And I went on Canvas guides and everything, and they said they fixed it, but I don't know how. But then once I used the HTML code once to break that preview, it started using it on all of my YouTube previews. So I don't know what I did. It stopped doing that preview on YouTube videos once I did it once with HTML code. So
there's also another little bit of an issue with YouTube videos in this. It used to be that you had a spot to embed very easily, and you could grab the embed code from a YouTube video that was unpublished. And so it wasn't public, right? That you could then put it into your Canvas course, but not have it public to the rest of the world, right? But your students could watch it. It's not as easy to do now. You still do have an embed section, but it's not really linked to videos. So when you go to the YouTube link, when you're looking at the videos tab, that you can only find public videos. Like you would search for the title of that video and be able to find it in YouTube and embed it, no problem. But if you're wanting to keep your content unpublished, it's a little bit more roundabout. So that's another quirk that I'm not happy about. But we just put the guide that should kind of walk through that new rich content editor. It definitely is, if you were used to the old one, it is very different and it'll take some getting used to. But we'll learn, right? We always do.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing at Melissa's upside down.
Yes.
I'm trying. Clearly, I did this. I can't figure out how to get the words go in the right direction and not be upside down. But you know, just my meme humor for you all today. But
Well, that is fantastic. That's a highlight. I like that. All right, so the technology is always an obstacle. I mean, one of the things that I love, that Global Campus has put these wonderful trainings for a lot of the different things that we use, Canvas and MediaSite, et cetera. And I've been very indebted to wonderful graduate teaching assistants for helping me with the tech side of my courses as we go through. So I love that they're here. Are there any other kind of comments or conversations you have about getting Canvas or any of these other tech ready for your courses next week? Because Laura and Trina are the experts.
And by the way, our video on this Thursday on tomorrow's is cross-listing. So if any of you teach multiple sections, then we're trying to get that covered quickly before Monday, and hopefully people haven't published and had a lot of action in their course yet. So
that's great. So yeah, one person put a quote and said, "Technology is an amplifier of human processes. If the underlying process is inefficient, technology will make it worse, not better." I feel kind of targeted by that quote right now, given the issues that I have with technology. I don't disagree with it, but I feel a little targeted. It's good. So what are the things that people are facing? Because I'll kind of say that at this point of the planning process for my courses and coming up with the syllabi and the course policies and the changes and all that, I have this period of indecision where I'm just aware of all of the things that I can do. And it could be this, or it could be that, or I could do it that way or this way. I could streamline this assignment. I could add this assignment. I could take this out. I could do it like this. And that period of indecision is really, really uncomfortable. And what I found, it is usually due to time pressure, I have to make a decision. So I'll be like, all right, I'm going to do assessment like this. And once I've made that decision, everything is great. That suddenly becomes my decision. We call this post-decisional dissonance in social psychology, that once you've made the decision, you now own that decision is yours. And I'm trying to find out ways to help me kind of speed up the process to getting to that, that acceptance and that embracing of the decisions that I make, because for 2 of my classes, I'm there. But for my 3rd, I'm still in that everything is a possibility phase, and it is highly uncomfortable. So I'm wondering any advice that anyone has about kind of speeding up that decision-making process and getting to a point of very good, because perfection is the enemy of completion, but getting to a point of very good rather than striving for perfect.
so I put this in the chat because I don't have advice for you, Don, or anybody else, but I have, I commiserate, is that the word I want? I'm a terrible decision maker when it comes to lots of things. And so a friend of mine once talked to me about maximizing and sufficing. And so at the time that those terms were new to me, but are you all familiar with those? Some people are, some aren't. So a sufficer is a person who, the example that helps is like when you go to buy a car. So you decide what gas mileage you want, what your budget is. You have 4 or 5 different things that the car absolutely has to have. A sufficer will look for a car until they meet those qualifications. And then once they find that car, they buy it and they stop looking. A maximizer will find the car that meets all of those qualifications that are necessary. And then they think, but what if I could find something better than that? I've met my minimum for gas mileage, but what if I can find better gas mileage? Or I've got a good price, what if I can save a couple more $1,000s? And so it's really hard to feel like you ever finish something, because you can always find better. And so a lot of times when we think about decision making, it's this, but I don't want to just settle. But sufficers don't settle. They can have really high standards for those 4 or 5 criteria they have, and they won't accept something less than that. It's just that when that minimum is reached, they stop. So I am clearly a great example of someone who knows the theory and doesn't put it into practice with my own decision making. I am still kind of a maximizer, but those can sometimes help with decision making. So,
Interestingly, given those definitions, I'm more of a sufficer, but it's hard to get me to the car lot because it's hard for me to come up on those characteristics. Once I get to the car lot, I'll pick the car that's best and I'll be happy with that. It's just getting to the point where I'm like, okay, let's do this. There's another kind of distinction that is made in cognitive judgment and decision making between exploiters and explorers. And explorers are people who are always looking to try the new thing, to try to find the best thing. And an exploiter, and I don't love the terminology here, but an exploiter says, this is the thing that works, so I'm going to continue to do that. So the example might be if you go to a restaurant and you always order the same dish because you know it's good, that would be an exploiter. But if someone goes to the restaurant and always tries something new to try to find something that's even better, that would be an explorer. And in that terminology, I would say I'm also an exploiter. I've done these things and they've worked and I'm going to continue to do them. But the circumstances have changed. So the ability for me to exploit the practices that have worked for me, it's just not quite as available. And I think that's creating some of the indecision for me this spring. Next week, it's going to be fine. On Monday, it's going to be fine. When that first class meets on Monday, I'll have made my decisions. Everything will be great. I'll be very happy. I think I'll give a great experience to my students. But the Wednesday before, when the entire teaching world is my oyster, it is very hard to get me to make a decision. And I don't know if that's just me or if others of you are in kind of that same boat. I think it's one of those things too about knowing a lot. One of the things that I've done, and I'm sure a lot of you have done this too, is I've done a lot of reading. I've done a lot of talking, I've done a lot of listening, and there are so many options out there for me now to consider. And for this class, this thing might work. For this other class, this other thing might work instead. And I'm having a hard time picking on that menu.
For the first time this semester, I'm going to be teaching a class that's like exactly my specialty. And I was like, this is going to be great because I know this topic like the back of my hand. I've been having so much trouble because for every day I'm like, well, I could give them this reading or this reading or this reading. Maybe I could give them all the readings. And then I'm like, okay, I need to calm down. It's just been I thought it was going to be so easy and it's been so stressful. And so hearing you say this, I feel so validated.
Laura is giving us wonderful advice because Andy, I'm feeling your pain. Go to your course outcomes, find out what you want to get out of your course. I think the issue that I'm facing, and I think Andy is facing too, is that there's getting your outcome done and then there's getting your outcome optimized. And that's not exactly the same thing sometimes. Because I'm going to get the outcome done, but if I go on that extra mile, because especially in your wheelhouse, you know so much. And I teach general psychology. I have 1 week and sometimes 1 day on social psychology, which is my wheelhouse. And I can strict myself to that because I've taught entire courses on one aspect of social psychology. So there is no way I'm going to be able to give them the full treatment. And one of the things that I do to make myself feel a little better about that is I do let my students know there's a lot else out there. And this is where you would find some of that. This is where you could go. This is how Google Scholar works, for instance, and that kind of thing, to let them know that there's this little thing, and I've given you a tiny piece, but there's a lot more to kind of check out. But it is so hard when a student asks a question, and I have a 2-hour response I could give them, and I give them the 30-second overview. I feel so unsatisfied there. That would be that maximizer, I think, as Melissa just taught us.
One of the weird things that I'm finding, I'm doing my upper level behavioral ecology course completely online with a weekly meeting in person on Zoom. But I'm recording lectures and I'm actually getting a lot more material into my lectures because I'm actually not in the classroom talking to the students and having them ask me questions. So I'm able to actually cover more content with this online format.
I discovered this past fall too. I was talking to one of you earlier today about when I prepare, say, a PowerPoint lecture, I have far more information than I'm going to teach. I just hyper prepare and I never want to run out of content, right? I've seen people kind of get to their last slide and just end class half hour early, and I never wanted to be that person, so I've always over prepared. There have been slides that I've written that I've never taught. I've just never gotten that deep into a lecture until this past fall, because we had none of these tangential discussions or none of this elaboration opportunities with my students. It's like, I'm going to teach on this topic I've never taught on, And it's going to take less time in these lecture videos than it would have in the entire week of contact that it would have had. And it was hard then for me to think about what is now an appropriate amount of content to hold them responsible for, because I have this wealth of information that I'd never taught as much of in previous semesters. So I can empathize with that too. There's all of these new challenges kind of coming in.
Well, and I catch myself when I'm recording the lectures, asking questions and waiting. It's like, oh, they're not here. They can't answer me.
I've done that too. And I've done things where I'll say like, the question you should ask me at this point is, and then the answer I would give you is, to kind of make that a little bit more organic to me. But I've fallen into that same trap too.
I had a couple students on that same kind of idea. A couple students talk about how when we went, especially when we first went online in spring of last year, that a lot of students, they said their professors went to asynchronous teaching. That's the word I wanted. Asynchronous teaching. And they said, my professors really think that we cover a lot more in our in-person classes than what we do. And they were just feeling like really overwhelmed. I saw a little bit less of that in the fall, but still, I feel like a lot of students are just feeling like, we don't normally do this much in a semester. And to be doing more than we normally do, in addition to being in a situation where things are already really stressful, like I just keep trying to tell myself that and go and like pull more stuff out of my syllabus. It's like, that's not really that important. This is not really like, what are the things that I really want to make sure that my students know, and everything else out, although it's making me cry.
Yeah, I think Laura's comment about the student learning outcomes is really important here, and that gives us the recipe for streamlining. And I think I don't streamline well because I've over the course of my career, I'm always learning more. I'm really good about adding stuff to courses. I'm not as good about what you're saying, Andy, about pulling the stuff back out. But I think the empathy that you're endorsing, obviously I can get down with the empathy you're talking about, right? The empathy that you're endorsing is really important here. So think about the context in which we're teaching, the context in which our students are learning, and figuring out what is reasonable, realistic, and fair for our students to do this semester. I think reducing the number of readings, I think reducing the number of lecture videos and having them spend that time more and applying their learning is a good trade-off in many of the courses that we're teaching. When I say things like that, a lot of people say, well, my accreditation requires that I teach all these things. That's fair, but find out a way to do that that's reasonable for your students given our current context. And I've had, brilliant colleagues tell me there's no way we can do this. Yeah, you can. We can do a lot of things when we have to. And what we're saying is it might be inconvenient, it might be uncomfortable. That's life. Sometimes things are inconvenient and uncomfortable. But I still think that we can get our job done if, as Laura has mentioned, I'm going to keep kicking back to it because it's wonderful advice, we keep track of what it is our students are supposed to learn in that course and then teach to those things.
I think we also have to take into context what we can achieve. Like I really need to update my course content. Like I need to update my videos. I want to make them shorter, more exciting, have less of them. And last week I started to work on it and I just got so stressed because in order to, if I change the video, I got to change the quiz. I got to change their study guide. I got to change this and that and the other thing. And I have 2 classes. I need to write a research proposal. And I was just like, you cannot re-record your videos this semester and have them I could do it, but I can't offer them this semester. Like I need to take the summer and the fall. And then once I made that decision to yes, you need to do this, but you can't do it right now. I could breathe again because I was gearing up for this incredibly stressful semester where I was going to be recording video and having to do all these changes on the fly. And so anyway, I just wanted to share that you can't do everything. And it was really hard for me to accept that my students were just going to have to go through another semester with these old videos.
I think that the tweaks that I'm making in my own courses this semester, I'll invest work if it lightens my workload. So if what I'm doing now, like revising an assignment, revising a point structure, is going to create a more streamlined experience later that's going to help me grade more efficiently, then I'll do that. But I'm not taking on things that are going to increase my workload right now. There's a time for optimization, and now is probably not it. As we read in that missive that was sent out to students, our faculty are prepared to teach in all modalities all the time on the drop of our hat. And I'm paraphrasing only slightly. right? So what happens is, in order to have that flexibility in our courses, just due to the fact that time is an exhaustible resource, some other things are going to have to go. And what I'm trying to do, and you heard me say this last week, is, I'm giving maximums for my students, right? So I'm reducing the length of a lot of their assignments, because when I give it, it comes back to me, and it's going to be easier if it's shorter. It's going to be more succinct if it's shorter. I teach my students the 4 C's of communication: clear, complete, concise, and compelling. I want things that are clear, complete, concise, and compelling, and giving them less space to do it, whether it's a shorter, word length or a shorter video length to do it in. It's going to be clearer, more complete, more concise, and more compelling. It's going to be better when it gets to me. That makes my job easier. So the changes that I'm making now are investing in my future experience. But you know what? And you don't need me to say this, but I am quite happy for your students to see the same videos from last semester, Kathleen. I mean, they worked last semester. I'm sure your students got a good experience. They were geared to their student learning outcomes. If you want to do revision in the future, that's fine. But now might not be the time. And I think sometimes we have to give ourselves that grace and that empathy to say, yeah, I could do it, but I'm not going to, and it's going to be fine. Now, I'll add in one disclaimer there. I'm assuming a moderate level of achievement so far. If you or a colleague truly sucks, then maybe you need to up your game. But if you're doing fine, staying fine is fine. So I just want to make that disclaimer. I don't want anyone saying Don said it's fine that I suck. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying if you're fine, staying fine is fine. I realize that was not my most eloquent moment, but there you go. As Laura's saying, it's okay to tweak and save for the next semester, but do it as you go this semester so you don't forget. One of the things that I'm a huge fan of, and Katie Linder talked about journaling in one of our first professional developments in the fall. One of the things I'm really good about is taking notes now for things I want to change later. So what happens is I have in my Principles of College teaching class, I have my class notes for each day. So each day, these are the things I want to achieve. Each day, this is the stuff I'm going to discuss. These are the questions I'm going to ask. And I take lots of notes on those. Like, don't ask this, ask it this way. And then I use those notes the subsequent semester. I highly recommend doing that. So I don't make the change necessarily in the semester, but I keep track of the change I wanted to make it easier for me later. I also have a hard copy. I'm a lower tech guy. I have a hard copy of my syllabi that I mark up during the semester with the same kind of thing. This is the way I want to change this policy. This is the way I want to change that schedule. And then when it comes time to create the syllabus for the next semester, it's easier for me to remember, hey, you wanted to make that assignment due a week later. Hey, you wanted to take this one out or replace it with this. And that gives me a lot more support in my own decision making. And a couple of you were talking about it, getting better about journaling and taking notes. There was a point where I would forget the notes I took, and then it would be in the middle of the class I meant to change that it occurred to me I wanted to make that change, but I was too far into have made that change. So it was kind of screwing up enough times like that motivated me to be better about my note taking and my journaling. So it might take you a few years like it did for me to kind of get good about that. But I'm at a point now where I do that pretty well because I have to.
I always keep a document for each class, I have like this class folder, and always in that folder, I have future semesters, and I just keep a running document that goes with each week. So, it'll be like week 1, and then I open up week 1 and it has like the future document. And so then when I go back and I'm teaching week 1 of that class again, I can look and be like, oh, right. Okay. So this is what I'm doing. This is how I'm adding. And I find that if I have it right there in my computer where I'm already opening all the stuff that I need, that then I remember it.
I love that. Do any other people have really good ways to kind of keep this organized? I love Andy's. Mine is even lower tech and less organized than that, but any other ways we kind of keep track of these?
I'm trying to decide whether I should bring this up or not, because sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. But there's some people use what they call their master class, or some people use a sandbox as an area to play, but then they have a master class. And so as you do little tweaks, then you have this master class that you can keep refining and keep building on. So if you find you do this a lot and it's more campus oriented that you're doing things or redoing videos and you're doing that work ahead, then that's always a good way to keep track of them. Sometimes we find that master classes sit and then they're not touched for like 5 years. So that's why I'm kind of, oh, should I even bring this up? But it works for some people really well.
One of the things that I found, and this is kind of going to what Kathleen was talking about. So Kathleen's talking more of an overhaul. I'm a huge fan of tweaks. I'm a huge fan of little changes, little things that don't really interrupt my entire course structure, but are kind of reasonable. And there's usually a point where a critical mass of tweaks creates a pretty easy overhaul. So one of the things to kind of keep in mind is that, those tiny things that we do build up to create a class. And sometimes I'll go back and look at a class I taught 10 years ago just to see the progression and to kind of feel good about that, because from year to year, you don't see that big a change, but over a period of time, you see that course really evolve nicely. And I think understanding that teaching is a growth mindset activity, right? It's something we're going to develop, we're going to progress. You don't have to go and be completely innovative and excellent in ways that had never happened before right now. You can do this. You can do this a little bit over time, what's realistic for you. And, you mentioned kind of doing it over the summer, do it over the fall. I don't give myself goals to do things over breaks really, because I need that time. I don't know about the rest of you, but I needed some downtime this winter break because I was burned out. And I didn't even know how burned out I was until after I had my last Zoom meeting of the semester and just fell on the floor. It was like, oh my God, I need time off. And I only sent like one email in 2 weeks and, all these kind of things. Tucker kept wanting a meeting. I kept pushing him back a week. It was amazing. And then I felt good. But I didn't have a lot of goals for me to do really overhaul things over the course of the break because I knew I wouldn't meet them and then I would just feel bad about not meeting them. So I try not to put a lot of pressure on myself to do those overhauls during breaks because I need to recharge. There's a term in psychology called strategic renewal or cognitive renewal. They're synonymous terms, which is the term put on relaxing so that highly productive people will do it. Because if you don't pitch it as something that's going to help their productivity, they won't do it. But strategic renewal and cognitive renewal means taking time off so that when you return, you're more productive. I needed to do that. And I think sometimes we need to budget that into our time rather than just to continue to plod along and say, as soon as I get a break, I'll do this other thing. Well, then that's not a break. And I think sometimes I need to remind myself of that, which is why I'm saying it out loud in case any of you need to hear it too.
I had a conversation with my sister last night that I found really helpful that after we were talking about how January, I never do New Year's resolutions, but I did this year more just to because I was I need a hard reset. I've just been in survival mode for so long that I'm just running on fumes. So I need to I'm making some major changes just so I can start over, try again. And I made just a couple of little changes that okay, these are the things that I want to focus on. And my sister was doing the same thing. And she was like, yeah, I made a couple small goals. And then every extra thing I do is something to celebrate. And she's like, and I've been doing so much more and feeling so much better about myself because she didn't put these I'm going to lose 20 pounds and I'm going to not eat any of this stuff. And, she didn't make these huge goals. She made some really basic, simple goals. And she's like, and it's given me a lot more energy to do more. And she said that. And I was like, ooh, I think that I need to be thinking about this in terms of my classes, some small, reasonable goals. And then if I have, if I'm feeling really motivated one day and I want to do a little bit extra, then I'll feel really great that I did a little bit extra. But keep trying to keep those, which I'm not good at trying to keep my goals minimal. I'm very much the I want to do it all. But that conversation, I was like, ooh, I needed to hear this right now.
I think I think this field and this endeavor attracts people who have really, really ambitious goals. Melissa even said in the chat that it's important that we remember that even sleep is important because if it didn't help our productivity, we wouldn't prioritize it the way that we do or don't right now. There's a cliche that academia is a pie eating contest where the prize is more pie. And I think that really nicely encapsulates what it is we're doing, right? If we do it well, we have more opportunities to continue doing it well. You know, if you do stuff good at the university, you get invitations to be on committees and part of panels and extra jobs and all of these kinds of things, right? We get more opportunities when we achieve our opportunities. And I think giving ourselves some celebration of the things that we do. If you got through your day and it was a decent day, you should celebrate that, right? I tend to focus on the stuff I didn't do, which sucks. And that's the hard part about being me sometimes. But I think it's not the best way to look at it, right? Focusing on what we did, not on what we didn't, is going to be much more satisfying. And I love being in the classroom with my students. I love being in there, they're face to face or on Zoom. And some of you have heard me talk about this before. I think this is the oasis. This is the place where all of the other stuff can't get us. You know, when I'm Zooming with my students or when I'm in class with my students, then all of the other things in my life, personal, professional, they're not relevant in that moment. As soon as that class ends, they will return to being relevant. But I'm really trying to allow myself and celebrate the experience of being with my students in whatever capacity I can. You know, maybe it's not optimal. Maybe I'm wearing a mask. Maybe they're socially distanced. Maybe some of them have their videos off. It might be hard, but it's better than not being there. And I'm really trying to celebrate and look forward to that experience, even though as of Wednesday before the semester break, I am not completely prepared for that experience. But I know when it comes, it's going to be awesome. And I'm going to enjoy it, and they're going to have a good experience. And I think just reminding myself of that is helpful. I had a colleague give me a bit of advice a long time ago. His name was Steve Kiefer. Some of you know him. He was a department head in psychological sciences. He was the honors director here. And we were talking at a K-State First event before the start of a semester. And he asked me how I was doing. I was like, oh man, I'm nervous. I don't have my stuff ready. I was like, I'm just crazy right now. And I said, how are you? And he said, oh, I'm fine. And I said, oh, you're ready for the semester? He said, absolutely not. I was like, then how are you fine? He's like, I will be ready for the semester. He's like, you'll be ready for the semester. Has a semester ever started and you weren't ready? And I said, no, it's always gotten done. He's like, well, then trust that you'll do it and don't worry about it. And it's actually kind of really liberating advice. And it's not a prescription for procrastination. Saying, trust you will do it. If you'll trust, you'll do it. You don't have to ruminate about getting it done. Just trust that you do it. You've always done it. You'll continue to do it, right? Past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. It'll get done. Don't worry. And I try to remind myself that around now before every semester, that it's not done, but it will be. I don't know how, I don't know when, but it will be done before I walk into class virtually on Monday morning. And it'll be fine and it'll go great. And I think sometimes just kind of that trusting in ourselves is important because that's sometimes hard to do.
Funny,
And
I've been thinking
said
that.
it feels like that at the end of the semester for grading, right? It'll get done. I don't know when. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Andy.
No, it's fine. I've been thinking that, you know, like the beginning of last semester, I've been doing a lot of comparison to like how I was at the beginning of last semester and this semester. And this semester, I'm like, I feel so much better. Like physically, emotionally, like I feel so much better. I'm totally not prepared. I'm way less prepared than I was at the beginning of fall semester. Fall semester, I was really prepared at this time, like looking forward. But I was just like, I was already falling apart, you know, like I had worked pretty much the whole summer straight, no breaks, lots of Zoom. And I'm just like, oh, wow. Yeah. And that's making me feel like, you know what? It's going to be okay. I don't have everything ready, but it'll be fine. I feel fine. And I feel like that is way better than having a semester prepared at this point. Like, it's going to be okay.
You know, it occurred to me, one of the things that often catalyzes the experience for me and kind of gets me to actually make some of these decisions is talk to somebody about it. So make an appointment with a colleague and just say, hey, I want to tell you about what I'm doing in my advanced social psychology course or whatever course you're teaching. And I find that having those conversations, like I made more progress in planning for my course when I talked to Noah Rankin, my TA for the course on Monday, than I had in the weeks prior. You know, the conversation that Tucker and I had this morning about the principles of college teaching, that course is now ready. When prior to that meeting, I had lots of questions. And just having a conversation, we talked a couple things out. In an hour, we made radical progress. So kind of using that social support system that we have, just say, let me tell you about my ideas about assignments. What I often find is my brainstorming turns into advocation. So it could be this, could be this. Hey, I think I really want to do this. This is really the best decision for this reason. Yeah, this is what I'm going to do. The other person hasn't said anything. They haven't given me any feedback. I talk myself into it just by telling the other person about it. So that might be something that I've used as a catalyst unknowingly until I put it together now. So this has been a very good meeting for me so far. I don't know what you're getting out of this, but this has been great for me so far. One of you said, I'm great at giving advice and terrible at taking that. I completely empathize with that too. So what questions realize this has turned into like, a therapy session for my anxieties about the semester, but what other questions, concerns, issues do we kind of want to get into in our chat?
One thing I'm thinking about, and I don't know what others have thought about it, is now that we're going to online for 2 weeks, I have a hybrid class after that, kind of setting those expectations because they're going to shift a little bit once there are some students in class and some online. And I haven't really thought through how that will change the class and what to do to keep the students coming to class and not ending up like last semester that we talked about, where a lot of us were losing students as the semester went on.
I'm really excited to hear some thoughts on this because I've thought a lot about this, I've had conversations about this. So for many of you in the same experience, what are you thinking about doing?
So I've mentioned this in prior teaching chats, but I think it was really, really useful. And I think taking advantage of the students' desire to connect with one another and become friends and socialize is probably the best bet. And I had my students do classmate interviews, and they could do them in person or over Zoom or over the phone, as long as it was talking and not a written form. And so me personally, and I think a lot of students, if you're 2 weeks at a distance and you get to interview or talk to a couple classmates and you think, I might actually get to meet this person, they're a real person, I'm gonna come to class and get to know this person, that might help and also get people past some of those, at the beginning feeling like I don't know anybody in this room and thinking, well, I know somebody, I can say hi to that person, I can introduce myself, and so you do some of that ice-breaking type of thing. It was one of my students' favorite things that they did all semester, and I only plan on having them do it once or twice. We ended up doing it 3 times, and the 3rd time I gave it as an option because some students didn't want to do it again, but all but 5, I had a class of about 20 and all but 5 wanted to do it again. So the rest wanted to do a discussion board that was interactive. So they were still interacting with classmates, but I think anything you can do that's community building and helping them get to know each other, especially a lot of students, not all of them, but they'll have been isolated and at home or away from those interactions since before Thanksgiving. I feel like it's the longest winter break ever in some ways. So that would be my thought on that. I know that's not enough, but that's where I'd start.
So Melissa, I love that idea and I'm really excited about it, and Noah's taking notes on it. I can see it. How do you logistically kind of put them in contact with each other?
So this I'd have to do differently because what I did is I assigned them to somebody, and then during class time, I gave them a few minutes to talk and figure out a time and date. So I think that I would just assign them to a partner, and then maybe you could just do it over Zoom, put them in breakout rooms and give them a time to figure out, okay, here's the time and date, because if they have it on their calendar that day, there won't be a week's worth of back and forth. So I'd probably just do Zoom breakout rooms for that.
Okay. I like that. That's an organic part of class, and you set it up. And I think, one of the things that I've talked about before with like group assignments, I think sometimes we don't do enough in class to support that group assignment. And I think what you're doing is reasonable, and you've given the ability for that to kind of be nurtured at the beginning of your class. I like that. That's great.
The other thing that I did that I tweaked the second time they did interviews is I had them email each other just some facts about themselves so they can get those, what's your major, where are you from, what do you do for fun, how many brothers and sisters do you have, those kind of basic questions out of the way. So they had to email each other those and copy me on it, just introducing themselves. And then that allowed them to come up with deeper questions like, well, what got you interested in playing soccer? Or what was it like growing up in a town of 200 people? Or what was it like to move from Texas to come to K-State? Things like that. So if they knew a little bit, they came up with much better interview questions that way. And I gave them some examples too. And then I also had them send each other a thank you email at the end. Hey, thanks for talking with me. I appreciated getting to know you. And they copied me on it, so I knew they completed the assignment as well. They also wrote a reflection. But the notes they wrote to each other were so nice. I mean, there were students writing things like, we completely disagree on politics, but I think I could still be your friend, or I wish I could get to know you better. Things they didn't have to write in that email. They could have just been polite. So it was a great habit to thank somebody for their time and interview, but it also, I think, reinforced how meaningful it was to them and to each other. So that's kind of the logistics of how I did that assignment too.
I love that. And I love that you're using that as a basis for community building. And I think when Clarissa, you first asked the question, I'm thinking about, why would a student attend class in person? And it would be community. It would be those social connections. I would think would be more, it would outweigh the disadvantages of, having to go there and show up and bring your mask and whatever. And I think creating that community, that intimacy, and that want to connect is a really important part. So what are other things that people are doing to entice students to come back to that face-to-face experience in whatever capacity that is, if we're allowed after those first 2 weeks?
So I was going to type a response to Kathleen's post about breakout rooms and how we tend to lose folks, but I'll just say it out loud. I actually, I'm helping with the OLC Innovate conference. And so we were talking about their last conference, the Accelerate conference, and the challenges that they have as a professional organization with professionals coming to these webinars, these sessions, and if they didn't know that there was a breakout room, once the breakout room is announced, they drop, they disappear. So it's not just our students, it's us as well, right? We're thinking we're coming, we're going to listen, we're going to process on our own. And then all of a sudden we have to talk to someone. Wait, what? I wasn't planning for that. I'm not ready and I'm gone, right? I'm not invested in that. So I think a lot of that is pre-building that, letting them know there's going to be breakout rooms, letting them know what it is we're going to be talking about, so that they can be prepared and thinking ahead. Some of us take a little while to process and think of things, and we don't want to look stupid. So we'd rather just disappear than invest. So why are those breakout rooms so important? What about it that is going to help them achieve their goals, be a participant, build that community, those kinds of things? We've got to start building that in, so that it's not just busy work and it's not just, oh, my teacher turned on the breakout room, so I got to go.
I was at a brown bag colloquium at the end of last semester, and I had it on my phone, and I was just kind of listening while I was making lunch with my kids. And they went to a breakout room, and I was like, I have to leave now. That's not where I could be. So I think kind of setting those expectations in your courses is going to be important as well. I found kind of the opposite in some of my classes, where they liked the breakout rooms. They'd turn the videos on, they'd engage. When we came back to the larger class, they turned the videos back off and disengaged. So they liked, and it's kind of, the same as when you're in a face-to-face class, and you're having pair up and there's a lot of energy in the room. It's like, okay, let's come back. And everyone's like, oh, we want to stay in our pairs. I felt that same kind of thing. So I really think it's if you give your breakout rooms a cool thing to do, you only give them a little bit of time to do it, and they have to produce a product. Those are the kind of things that I found a lot of success in my breakout rooms with. So I think it's when they get off topic, when they've accomplished their goal and they get off topic, I think that's when the breakout rooms have a little bit less value. But giving them something small, less time than they need, and bringing them back with a product, I've had a lot of success with doing that. I saw a couple other things in the chat and I missed it. I'm sorry. Andy talks about giving students roles in the breakout room, like being a spokesperson. Kaylee's talking about study buddies to kind of find a way to create those connections with other peers in the class. I think that's a really good idea. Time length is key. Melissa is talking about that too. And doing things that work well with the whole class in small groups are other things to kind of keep in mind. So, and I apologize for my dog barking. We're probably getting a package because we get a lot of packages in the online world. So what other ways are we going to kind of entice them back to that face-to-face environment? Because It's not wonderful. Now we have reciprocal barking going on here. It's not wonderful when you show up to teach a face-to-face class in a high flex or hybrid environment and you don't have many people to teach in the class, and you're trying to do a lot of the Zoom participation. Tucker and I got to a point last year where we came to a face-to-face class and everyone was on Zoom, and that wasn't our happiest day. So I think kind of having the conversation with your students about why would you come, what can we offer, and then seeing whether or not that's going to be reasonable for your class. I don't think we have to give students everything they ask for. But if I think students make a comment about what's going to be valuable and it does fit into the context of your class, it does fit those student learning outcomes, then by all means do that. Some of my students said, I just need to get out of the house once in a while, and your class is one of the reasons I do that. If there's a critical mass that's why they're there, I'm completely happy in doing that. And I'm willing to hear other ideas. I'm going to mute because my dog is annoying even me. So. And now is the time when you would have talked. So when I'm in class, my dog is gonna stop. When I'm in class and I ask a question and I get the silence, there are two things I do. I either ask a different question or I rephrase the same question. I'm gonna opt to ask a different question to kind of keep that discussion going, thinking that maybe we've kind of gotten through the ideas we have there. What is the thing you're most scared of next week or this semester? What's the thing you're most scared of in teaching this semester? Because I know I have a long list of things that I'm scared of, but what's the thing you're most scared of in your teaching this semester? And you can say it out loud or drop it in the chat.
So I just went to a training yesterday, and I'm laughing because one of it was on formative assessment, right? And how you get your students to build their knowledge and that kind of thing. And one of the things we talked about is how we can make that work in the online environment, right? And so one section we were talking about silence in a Zoom session, right? And that the average time we should be waiting for responses is actually 20 seconds.
That's forever.
That's forever. Right? So how do we make that effective in an online Zoom session, right? And so the ideas were that you're giving them something to read silently, right? A slide or, an article or whatever, that you're asking them to journal for a few minutes, right? You're giving them permission to think. You're giving them permission to process, and you're waiting. As uncomfortable as maybe you put up a clock, right? And let that tick down, because we have to remind ourselves to wait, because it's so hard. We want to just, oh, nobody's talking, I should say something, I should, like you did, you changed the question, those kinds of things, right? But the waiting is good because we do need time to process. So maybe you go ahead and rephrase the question, but can say, this is the same question, I'm just going to say it a different way. Go ahead and process, but I'm expecting some responses. The other one, and I don't recall if we've talked about this here, I think we have, is the whole don't have everybody load their response in the chat, but don't hit enter until everybody hits it, after 20, 30 seconds. So again, it's okay to wait. It's hard, but it's okay. So back to your other question now, what are we afraid of? I'm afraid of waiting.
And that's really hard. One of the things that I have started to do, I know that Andy mentioned having a timer. I'll tell my students, I'm going to give you 20 seconds, and then I watch the clock, or I have a TA tell me when 20 seconds is up or something like that, because I'm horrible at waiting. And part of it is going back to the point we talked about earlier, is I have a lot of stuff I want to talk about. So that 20 seconds is 20 seconds of stuff I could have told you. It's 20 seconds of stuff where I could have been listening to something you say. So it almost feels like it's wasted time, even though it really isn't. And that's something that I'm glad you offered, Laura. That is awesome. in the chat, I'm hearing people talk about being afraid of burnout, being afraid of self-motivation and staying efficient and productive. Long-term fear about this may be our new normal, about not going back to those wonderful face-to-face classes that attracted many of us to teaching in the first place. Um, these are hard. Scared of losing one part of a class because spending too much time and energy on the other part, especially in those high flex environments where you're spending time on the people in person versus the people on Zoom, and you feel like you maybe can't do them both justice at the same time. And these are things I think that are legitimate fears. And how are we going to manage these fears this semester and still be excellent teachers? By the way, you won't hear me talk about teaching effectiveness because I don't think effectiveness is a very high bar. You'll hear me talk about teaching excellence. I don't think I ever want to be effective at anything. Effective is faint praise at best. I want to be excellent. So as we're striving for teaching excellence, how is it that we're going to manage these fears that we bring into the environment too? Because our students can sense fear. Our students can pick up on that fear too. So if we're bringing it in, if we're uncomfortable, they're going to pick that up. So how do we manage all of these things?
I think it's okay to acknowledge the things that we're feeling nervous about. I mean, I've already started having beginning of the semester anxiety dreams where, I show up to class and I'm, don't have my computer with me, so I can't get onto Zoom and I can't show my PowerPoint, and then I don't know what time class is over, and like I have at the beginning of every semester. And I think that I'm just going to share that at the beginning of this semester and kind of start out with like, yeah, this is tough. This is not the way that I normally teach. This is not the way I feel comfortable teaching. I'm going to do the best I can. I invite you to do the best that you can. I also, on the first day of class, always give them some questions to answer. And one of the questions that I always ask is, what are your big concerns about your ability to be successful in this class, or something to that effect? And that gives the students, it's individual, only I see it. It gives them an opportunity to say whatever it is that's going on with them, that they're worried about. And so that, we can have that. And by starting out with something that I struggle with or something that I'm worried about, it gives the students a little bit more permission to put that on there. Like, yeah, I'm dyslexic and I'm really worried about how I'm going to be able to, do all the readings or whatever the case may be.
So Andy, I think you encompassed all 5 levels of peace in that single answer. That was amazing. I love that. What else can we do? And Andy may have just dropped the mic there, but so it's hard to follow that. But what else can we do to kind of manage these anxiety with our students? She's got the display of authenticity. She's got caring. She's demonstrating all of those kind of things. What else can we do?
I think one thing that eases my anxiety is thinking of the classroom like an experiment. So something isn't working, I can try something else. And if that doesn't work, I can try something else. Like I'm not stuck with just this solution. And if it doesn't work, oh well.
I love that. I like to tell students that teaching, there are so many do-overs. And I often think about, if a class goes bad, I go to another class. But even within a class, as you're saying, as an activity doesn't go the way that I want it to, I can course correct. And I think that's one of the things about the face-to-face environment. It's easier to do that. So, when I'm asynchronously lecturing into the void, it's harder for me to course correct if something isn't going well. A student can't tell me that example made no sense. But I do love that actuality of the face-to-face. And maybe one of the things we do in selling our students on that face-to-face experience, or even the synchronous video on experience, is you're going to do better because we're going to better be able to share when we get it and when we don't. And I can support your learning better when I know what your questions are and what your confusions are. If you're there to share them with me in real time, I can better support you. If you're not, it's going to be harder for us to make that connection.
So I'm going to have to run, but Melissa, I really liked what you put in the chat. That fear that now we're always going to have to be remote or high flex or online. And I don't think that's going to happen. I think that there are thousands and thousands of students that need the in-person structure, right? One of my sons is one of those. He failed last semester. He couldn't do it. And so he will never be a fully online student. He will never choose that path. And there's thousands of other students that are like that. I think this has opened up a lot of possibility for a lot more students. I think it's opened up a lot of possibility for faculty too on how they can blend some technology elements and make their in-person time more meaningful, where they're not just lecturing, right? But I don't think it's ever going to fully go away. There's just so much richness from the campus community that is built that I don't want it to go away.
I think you're saying a lot of things that a lot of us are very happy to hear, Laura, and I really appreciate that. We are about out of time. I'll stick around for another couple minutes if anyone wants to chat further. But thank you so much for engaging in this teaching chat. If anyone has any questions or comments that they, want to talk about or share before the start of the semester, let us know. We're always game to talk teaching. And our PD series will continue next week at noon over Zoom, where we'll hear from Barbara Wigfall about mind, body, and spirit, which are things that you've got to take care of this semester. So thank you so much. Good luck in your final preparation for the syllabus, and we look forward to seeing you soon.